Hey everybody, BDS here. Today we're talking about the Iron Claw. Look guys, I know you've heard the hype around this movie, The Iron Claw. If you don't know the story, and by now pretty much everybody should know the story, whether you're a follower of wrestling or not, but it does follow the famous Von Erich wrestling family out of Texas, where I grew up. The Von Erichs were heroes of mine, people I looked up to, and Kerry Von Erich specifically is one of the reasons I got into professional wrestling myself. Just because of the excitement that they brought to professional wrestling. They were heroes in that area. I mean, when I tell you rock stars, that's what they were. And you couldn't go anywhere. In Dallas, they were all over the billboards, Pizza Hut commercials everywhere. It was crazy. And when this project came to light by Sean Durkin and A24 Studios, which I got to tell you, this studio is on fire right now. I was intrigued, but you always wonder when they do things like this, when these biopics of a sort are made, how faithful can they be to the story? Because the Von Erich family story it's tragic, it's hopeful, um, very Shakespearean in nature with how it all played out and what happens to this family, the rise or fall. And this movie does a really good job at that now. Because I want to hit this at the very beginning. Because it's been brought up a lot, it's talked about a lot. There's not many Von Erich fans bigger than me. It's just how it is. You'll see back there on my banners, way back there. It's a little dark back there, so you can't see it. Kerry Von Erich action figure that I got last Christmas, and I mean I'm a huge fan. So Chris Von Erich, one of the Von Erich brothers, is not in this movie. The youngest of the Von Erich brothers, as a matter of fact, and I've seen all arguments as to why and why he should be and why he wasn't. And why would they not include him? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, length of the movie really has a lot to do with it. And two, the other one is that you're just piling more tragedy on top of more tragedy. Now, I personally think it would have gave it a little more weight to do that. I mean, this movie was heavy. Don't get me wrong. This movie was heavy. There was a lot of tough content, and it was heavy. And for that reason, I get why they might not want to do it. I get more of the structure of the movie reasons as to why, because if you tell his story, it's going to add about 30 minutes in length to the movie just to do it justice and to tie it in with everything else. You can't just mention it and then throw it away like, okay, well, we did say his name in there. So they combined Mike's and Chris's story together. And the beautiful thing about it was they didn't just haphazardly do it. He spent a lot of years working on the screenplay. He spent over 10 years working on this screenplay alone. A lot of people don't know that. John Durkin did. That's a lot of time to put into writing a screenplay. Sean Durkin did that to make sure you got the story right. And in several drafts, Chris Von Erich was actually in the story, but just kept coming back to narrative because this is a movie. This is not a documentary series, all right? If you want to tell the whole Von Erich story, you have to make a documentary series, and that's not what this is. This is a movie. It's about triumph over tragedy, all right? It's about survival. It's about unspeakable tragedy and being able to overcome that. That's what this movie is. And so they had to take those liberties with that to crush it down in a manageable time period to sit into, so you can sit in that theater and watch it. And I thought they did a great job with that. And the beautiful part was that they did run it by Kevin Von Erich. Kevin okayed it, he understood. And I love that his only requirement is that you showed how much the brothers loved each other in this movie. And boy, did they do that. I mean, we've always heard that they loved each other and that was a tight family, especially those brothers. And that really came across in the movie. It really came across in the movie. It was excellent. Zac Efron, he's been getting a lot of praise for his role as Kevin Von Erich. And rightfully so, he knocked it out of the park. I mean, he just crushed it. He actually was built a lot more like Kerry than Kevin. I mean, he was absolutely jacked. Jeremy Allen White was another one who he played Kerry. What a great job he did. I felt all the actors in this movie did a tremendous job portraying their roles. I mean, Hope McElhaney, good Lord. I never thought it'd be possible to cast Fritz, and I think that's one of the most important roles in the movie. Because without a good Fritz Von Erich, this movie does not have the same impact. It just doesn't. It doesn't have the same impact without Fritz. And boy, they nailed it. He was great. This dude was great. Lily James as Kevin's wife Pam. Their whole story, she was awesome. Um, David Bonner, Harris Dickinson. Wow, wow. He nailed David. He nailed David. That was great. But I love this. I love the movie. It was awesome. It lets you see exactly what these brothers, how tight they were, and the struggles that they endured being, I don't want to say forced into being wrestlers, but they were groomed to be professional wrestlers. And when life didn't go the right way when they were trying, like for Kerry. Kerry was a world class athlete. Discus on his way to the Olympics. America boycotts the Olympics that year. His dad gets him into wrestling. So the narrative that Fritz was just saying that you've all got to be wrestlers is not true. Kevin was going to play football. Kerry was going for Olympic glory, which would have been great, but it didn't work out. And they all kept funneling back into wrestling. And then when the tragedy started happening, starting with David, and actually there was one tragedy they mentioned, their youngest brother Jack, who died at 6 years old in a terrible accident. He was actually the oldest brother. And then by the time David passes, and it just starts happening. It just starts piling on. Such a burden and a weight to each of the surviving brothers that you really feel it. I mean, you feel it, and how can you overcome? And by the end of it, you're just like, wow, wow, how strong of a human being do you have to be to overcome all of that? And this is really Kevin Von Erich's story, a story about survival, about having this tight knit group, a family around you, truly a tight knit group that you would go to battle for, that you would die for, and one by one, they're all taken from you. Kevin has this really great quote, and I've heard it so many times, but it's just true. How he said that, I used to have 5 brothers and I'm not even a brother. That's terrible. It's heart wrenching, but it's so true. And they didn't put everything into this movie they could have. There were a couple of incidents they could have put into this movie to really make it tough, to really make it stand out and make you go, oh my God. Like there was an episode with Kevin and Fritz towards the end of Fritz's life. Fritz had brain cancer and lung cancer, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was the 2 cancers he had. Going downhill, Kevin stopped by to see him one day, and Fritz pulled a gun on him, pointed it at him, at his own son, telling him if you're any kind of man, you would kill yourself like your brothers did. And Kevin looked at him and said, Dad, stop pointing that gun at me. He kept telling him, he said, it doesn't take guts to kill yourself, it takes guts to live. That's not in the movie. I wish they'd have put that in the movie, because to see that play out on the big screen would have been something. And again, there were several moments like that. But even those that they left on the cutting room floor, they didn't film at all. This movie is terrific. You walk out there, and you're going to feel some kind of way when you leave this movie. I mean, it really grabs you. And I know this story backwards and forwards. So when they're doing things, I'm like, okay, I see where they combined this episode. Like there's some famous wrestling events that occurred, and you understand they have to combine these things for time's sake to get it right. But you want at least to get them in there and acknowledge them. And for narrative purposes, you see what they're doing, right? Like I'm not a nitpicky person like that where it has to show every single thing. We have a 17-hour movie. You can't do that realistically. And so you understand what they're doing. They did it with the Elvis biopic. They did it with Bohemian Rhapsody. They do it with all these because their life stories are just too much to cram into a 2 hour and 15-minute movie. It's just too much. Sean Durkin did a great job. All the actors in here are top notch. They did a great job. If you haven't seen The Iron Claw, you should. I don't know how many times you could really make yourself go watch this movie, but you got to see it once. I mean, it is a terrific movie. Some movies are rewatchable. I don't know how many times I could rewatch this tragedy. I'll be honest with you. It's tough. And for somebody who loves this family and was so affected by them growing up, it would be hard for me to sit through time and time again watching this tragedy. It really would be. Because even sitting through it, you know what's coming. And it's still tough. It's still tough. I did like the choice with David's death, because I heard some gripes about them showing that death or them not showing that death. Really, it did not happen on screen. The death did, And I actually liked that choice because we were all surprised when it happened. We were all surprised when all of a sudden they announced the news that David Von Erich was dead. Like, wait, what? And it was, they don't, I will tell you, they do not dance around the drug use, the pill use. Of course, it was rampant back in the 80s. Good Lord. But they don't dance around it. They really don't. They don't dance around the mental illness part of it. They don't dance around the issues with David and especially with Mike and what happened with him and his issues. And I thought that was great. And we didn't see as much of Carrie's as I thought, since Carrie's family's not even here. They didn't even mention the fact he had a wife and had 2 daughters. They left all of that out because, again, that's a lot more you're having to put into the movie. And I get this is really Kevin's story about overcoming the tragedy. So I understood it. Would I like to have seen it? Sure, because I think it would have given Carrie a little more, would have given a little more impact and weight to his story and his death. But geez, they nailed a lot of it though, and really being able to see his accident and how he was trying to cope with his accident. I mean, we've heard it, we've heard the stories, but to see that play out before your eyes, that was tough. That was tough. I could not imagine the absolute will it takes to hide an injury like that. To have your foot amputated and hide that injury and still wrestle, be athletic with no foot, and be so good at it that no one even questions it. They don't know. They have no idea because they hid that for years. And again, you're going to see that some of the time periods, some of the things that happened were in different spots. But again, that's just for narrative purposes. The whole point of the movie was to tell a story of loss, a story of survival. And the end of the movie was beautiful. It was beautiful in how the movie ended. And it was sad because there's one particular scene, I'm not going to spoil this, but there's one particular scene that they put in this movie that was so awesome because, and I'd heard this once before, and I'm trying to go back and find this interview, but Kevin had mentioned this, and he saw this on the big screen with what this ending was and what one of the ending scenes was, and was just floored by it. And when you see it, you'll understand what it is, but it's crazy. It was crazy. It was wild. It was touching. It was fitting. I loved it. If you're a wrestling fan at all, you need to see it. But if you're a film fan, if you're dealing with mental health and you're dealing with tragedies, or there's something you need to see, this is a great movie. It's an excellent movie. And it's a movie about survival. And I loved it. I recommend going and see it. It's 5 out of 5 reels for me. We're doing this on a reels basis. And that's what we're going to do. Go out and check out this movie. I think you'll love it. That's it for me today. BDS here. Iron Claw. Check it out.